I'm Mel, and welcome to Rain's channel. Hey guys, don't forget to like and subscribe to support this channel. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy your listening.
The first story we're going to read is by Juliano, titled My Story. It started when I was 3 years old. One night, I awoke to find a small, childlike figure in my bed with me. He was about 2 feet tall and had the features of a small child, but its head was swollen well beyond a normal size. It was wearing a blue gown, with the hands not visible at the end of the sleeves. It was moving its mouth, talking in gibberish. The figure was as real as I was, and it was surrounded by a kind of glowing haze. I ran to my parents' bedroom and woke up my dad, but, of course, he told me to go back to sleep. So, I returned to my room, and now the figure was standing on my bed. I grabbed a pillow and covered my face and jumped on the bed. It was gone. That started something that would last the next 26 years. I'll condense the years up until 1990. Those appearances, while still frightening, never really made me feel threatened. During this period, which included teenage years, I saw the figure with the same frequency. My bedroom is located at the end of a hallway, with 2 other bedrooms before mine. At the other end of the hallway is a landing that blocks the view to the steps. From my bed, I could look out my door and down the hall to the landing and the top of the steps. I always knew right before the figure would appear, because the hair on the back of my neck would stand up and I would get uncontrollable chills. The figure would then appear either on top of the landing or come around the base of the landing and start down the hallway towards my room. It never really seemed to pay any attention to the other rooms at all. I would normally panic and either shut my door or run into my parents' room and sleep on the floor. Imagine finding your 18-year-old son curled up on your bedroom floor when you wake up in the morning. My parents and sister didn't really fully believe that I was seeing this apparition. I also would stay up late, being the night person that I am, and watch TV. In my living room, we have the stairs that lead up to the 2nd floor. It has a wooden railing on it that goes the length of the last 4 steps. I would often see the figure on these steps, watching me from the 3rd or 4th step and then disappear. The only real changes during this time period were that the figure was losing its color and it was becoming more transparent. Now, things will change drastically. A neighbor with some knowledge of this sort of activity told me to confront the figure and tell it to leave and never come back. I was to tell it that I was its power source and I was shutting off the power. I did this and enjoyed about a year of no sightings. Around this time, I told the story to my girlfriend of the time. She thought that its description sounded like a baby with water on the brain and still wearing its gown from the hospital. She thought that it was a lost soul trying to contact me to help it with some task, so that it could finally rest in peace. I started to look into the house's history and families. The house sits on land that was farmland and a dirt road only 150 years ago. The land was owned by one man and he had his farm and homestead around the area of my house. The main house of his estate is only 1 block from my house and is still standing. My house is 40 years old and we are the 2nd family to live in it. The couple before us had no children that we know about. I have a sister 3 years younger than me and no other siblings. I have asked my parents if they had a child that died that I was unaware of, but they didn't. So, after all my checking, I found nothing that could explain the apparition. After a week of thinking about the interpretation my girlfriend had given, guilt of banishing the figure overcame me. I asked it to come back one night and told it I would help it. The very next night, the sightings started again, but with much greater intensity. I can say now, never do what I did. Once it's gone, let it stay gone. The sightings would happen more frequently, and sometimes they would terrify me. The figure looked the same, but something was very different. I was sure what it was, but now there was another force in addition to the familiar figure. I began to see small, black-colored creatures, which I can only describe as imps. They were solid black, 1 to 2 feet tall, and ran around on all 4s. They appeared mostly in the living room and coming from the hall closet. Now, to explain the rest of the house setup that pertains to the story. The man that lived here before us started to dig out a basement, but he never completed it. All that remains is a 3 to 4 foot crawl space accessible from outside the house. The hall closet was to be the stairs down to the basement. He had started making the stairs going down, but boarded it all up when he had stopped digging the basement. The stairs going up to the second floor are directly over the what would be basement step and the hall closet. So, there are 2 ways from inside the house to access the crawl space. If you really wanted to, rip up the 3rd and 4th step of the stairs or knock out the back of the closet. I began to make the connection between where the figures appeared and where the access ways were. The sightings got more intense, and sometimes they even drove me from my house. Normally, my dog would sense the small figure and act funny when it was around, but now, when the imps appeared, my dog would be in a very deep sleep, and I could never wake him up. I would either leave the house and stay over at a friend's. Sometimes I would be knocking on their door at 2 a.m. terrified. Other times, if I was able to get between them and the steps, I would make a run for it to my room or my parents' room, because even these creatures would not venture into the bedrooms. My mother was noticing my moods, and I had told her about the new happenings, so she told me to get her the next time I saw the figure or imps. The next time I saw the figure upstairs coming down the hall, I ran to her room and woke her up. I led her out into the hall where the figure still was. I pointed to it, and it began to back away and go down the steps. I chased it down to the 3rd step where it vanished. While she could not see it, she could tell by my eye movements that I was watching something moving across the hall steps. I think that's when my family started to believe a little. I became used to these new additions because they never did any harm, but they did make me feel very uneasy. The figure was becoming even more transparent. Certain lamps in the house would go on and off by themselves, often with other witnesses around. I would hear the TV go on in the middle of the night when I knew no one else was downstairs. I had theorized that the figure needed help to appear because it was slowly fading away. I assumed the imps were helping him, but the figure was still fading. I was waiting for a new addition to the cast, so the figure could still appear, since I still hadn't figured out what it wanted me to do. The sightings stopped again for a few months. I spoke with a parapsychologist, but then decided to leave well enough alone. I didn't want things getting worse. I decided to go into the crawl space and check out the area under the stairs. I took my dog down there with me, and I crawled to the area. There had not been anyone under there for years before this. I found an old maid playing card with not a bit of dust on it right under the 3rd step. We have wall-to-wall carpeting, so this did not fall through the joints. I hadn't seen that deck of cards for over 20 years, but here was one. It had one corner that looked like it had been dipped in acid, but the rest was in good shape. I took it and put it in a pocket Bible and put it in my car. The sightings started again, only very small. I would call my girlfriend on the cordless phone and tell her it's happening again, and then walk upstairs while still on the phone with her. The next time was the worst of all. The figure appeared very bright, like it did years ago, but it didn't look very happy. The imps appeared again, but they were more bold this time. Then, a 7-foot-tall, man-shaped black figure appeared. It looked like it was either made of smoke or some liquid. It looked semi-solid, and you couldn't see through it. At the same time, the room was filled with imps, and a bearded old man's face took shape on the wall and started mumbling. The face was about 6 foot high and 4 foot wide. The familiar figure looked like it was sorry for doing this to me. I left the house and sat in the car until dawn. I knew I had to confront the new entity and try to drive it away. I also feared that if it wanted me, it was going to get me either way, so I had nothing to lose. My sanity, life, and maybe my soul were on the line, and I honestly believed this was the only way to stop it before it branched out. I was the original power source, so I was going to shut off the power. The next night I prayed for protection and the strength to drive this evil away. I had a Bible handy as I sat up, as usual, listening to my CDs. About 2 a.m. I noted that my dog was in one of those deep sleeps, and I began to look around. The figure and the tall black figure appeared along with the rest of the apparitions. I informed them in the calmest voice I could get at this time that I was taking away their power and they had no hold on me or power over me. I told them my family, and house was protected by God and they could not harm us. I walked right past the tall figure and the imps and moved out of my way. I walked right up the steps and never looked back. That was about 2 years ago, and I have not seen them since. We placed a Bible on the stairs and a cross in the closet to block off their entrances. I still feel there is a presence there that tries to get me to let it in. I still hear bumping and walking around, but the apparitions are gone, banished to the crawl space, I assume. They will not get another portal in here, so they will remain there. We did have the house blessed years ago, everywhere except the crawl space. I think that might be the answer to end it all for good. Footnotes, 1998. I have learned a lot since I put my story to paper. I now realize that many of my reactions to the majority of the encounters were, while natural, not necessary. The house was haunted by an earthbound spirit, and when I had asked it to leave, it stopped contacting me, but was still there. It never harmed me, and was only trying to get my attention. Because I didn't understand what was happening, I reacted the way everyone else would, with fear. I did tell it to come back, and the way I did it caught the attention of other earthbound spirits in the area, and one non-human one. The majority of the experience after I opened the door back up were with human spirits, some not as friendly as the original one who also came back. While there was one encounter with something I believe was a non-human entity, the majority of the other spirits were earthbound human spirits. In regards to the black imps, let me just say that these may have been either a type of spirit. I'm still not sure at this point. I have researched them further, but I am unable to say with or without a doubt that they were evil. I believe the tall black figure was evil though.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the narration, don't forget to like the video and make sure you subscribe for future content just like this. If you have a story you would like to be narrated, just contact Rain by email. It's linked down below. We look forward to seeing you again next week. Bye!